this came up a lot yesterday, which is that when we're talking about civil society, it is a large group, and often when one says CSOs, we forget about the role that community platforms can play. So in India, we're lucky that we have amazing community platforms, whether it's the self-help groups, whether it's the school management committees, or of course, even the essence of our decentralized governance, which is the Panchayati Raj institutions. So if any innovations and experience that you have seen in terms of how these community platforms can build agency, but also help in doing a lot of this gap filling that we've seen, particularly during COVID times, but even otherwise?
We do a lot of work with, well, a fair amount of work with the SHG platform, and we are beginning to work with the PRI platform. And really, they're both so critical. I mean, both of these, as well as all other such platforms, they're so critical in terms of being that last mile connect between policies, programs, and communities, right? So a country could have the best policies, we could have the best programs, we could have all the funding in place, and yet not quite get where we want to get, because somewhere there are gaps and cracks at the last mile. And that's where the role of these platforms become really, really key in multiple ways. We work with community platforms both in UP and Bihar. We found that there is a whole continuum of engagement that is possible with these platforms, starting with greater awareness in terms of the issues. Because if we take the PRIs, for example, PRI is a governance platform, but that doesn't necessarily automatically imply that there is sort of robust understanding of what the gaps may be in our, let's say, health, education, nutrition systems, etc. So it's, and the same goes for SHGs as well. Although, of course, one could argue in daily engagement, any human being, any community member or citizen would know what they want. But basically starting with, okay, what are some of the programs? What could be the entitlements? What is it that needs to happen at the level? What sort of behaviors are important in order to, let's say, improve your health and nutrition? Because for health and nutrition, behaviors, as we all know, are very important. So there's the whole awareness component. The next one, if we were to go down the continuum, is ensuring that services are running and access to these services, enabling community members to access the services that are indeed there. And third, of course, is making sure that the services are working, which is what Meenakshi referred to in terms of accountability. So monitoring, accountability, etc.
What are the strategies that APPI uses to support such collectives of communities, particularly to make sure that marginalized voice is also heard? And that's often a big challenge.
I think the big challenge we are facing is that, we are still an early democracy, and there is a disquiet with democracy that we can see. Services are broken, people cannot hold power or duty bearers to account, and patronage systems are, pretty rampant just for basic services for people to survive. So our solution has to be, how do we deepen democracy, and through that route, and we try and address some of the challenges. It definitely gets worse for the more marginalized. They don't have voice, they don't have, representation and ability to make claim. So one strategy which movements historically have done, many civil society organizations have done, which is to collectivize people, especially those who are marginalized, to gain voice, gain agency, and to be heard. For example, in the civil society space, I asked many NGOs who have been working for many decades in, say, in Adivasi areas, and I asked them a simple question. In your middle management, how many Adivasis are there? In your board, are there people from the Adivasi community? Forget senior management. Why is it that only your community worker or animator or some such terms that are used, it's only Adivasis are only represented there, and we continue to speak on behalf of them. So it's important that the marginalized have their own. So one of the things we in the Azim Premji Philanthropy, and I personally for long past have been feeling, is that we need the marginalized need to have their own organizations, their own leadership, and these organizations work for them. So among the few things we have been trying to do is, if we can find organizations of the marginalized group, how can we help them become stronger? We are also actively working with many of our partners to see how can leadership from the marginalized groups, be it, Dalits, women, Adivasis, um, you know, can leadership rise from among them? Can we help invest in, people, youth from these communities, help them build their perspective so that they can themselves then negotiate with both agents of the state, the local governments, bureaucracy, as well as with modernity to set the pace of change.
Going a little broader, if you could share a few, again, best practices or examples of where grant making has actually led to real citizen state engagement.
For us at Omidyar Network, as we think about this relationship between citizen and government, and how that relationship can actually be used to strengthen and help improve the quality of governance in the mission ultimately of saying how can people's lives be improved, right? How can people's lives become better? The role that technology plays is quite central in the way that we think about this, because of the fact that technology can enable ideas to scale up in ways that sort of non-technology driven initiatives might often struggle a little bit with. And for us, the idea of scale is quite critical, because in a country as large as ours, you do want to sort of try and make sure that ideas get to as much scale as possible. And so that's the reason that we think about technology. The central way that we think about the need to involve citizens in improving governance is in the fact that clearly it's the whole demand side idea that has been talked about before as well, right? Which is that unless citizens are actually stepping up to demand access to services or demand better services, then the desire for the state, or the extent of accountability that either bureaucrats or politicians will face will be a lot lower, than if citizens are actually stepping up. So if you think of an entire continuum, and you say at one end of the continuum, you might have a somewhat cynical or apathetic citizen who says, there's no point engaging, what is going to change? Things are too difficult, and so on. And on the other hand, you think of someone actually moving along a spectrum where they go from there to saying, no, I do want to speak up for what is right. First of all, I have an understanding of what my rights are. If the state has promised a certain service to me, then it is my right to get that service. And I have a good understanding of that right. So how can you first of all take the citizen from one end of the spectrum to the point where they at least acknowledge that, yes, I have an understanding of what is due to me, and therefore will feel comfortable raising my voice in demanding what is due to me.